What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and today we're going to be using the fighting game tutorial to go over root motion in our animations and how to make that work for Mixamo animations. So it doesn't matter what project you do this in, you don't have to know the fighting game or anything to know how to do this or to follow this tutorial. If you would like to check out the fighting game tutorial, I'll leave a link in the icon in the top right corner so you can check out the first episode. We're 54 episodes in at this point, so we've made a lot of progress on this fighting game. There's still plenty to go. Okay, so what I've got here is I've changed some of the animations. Those who are familiar with the series may know, and that's because I now have root motion capability on my character. So I can walk back and forth and the camera follows, right? The camera follows the character from the root component, so it follows the capsule collider. So the way you know the root motion is working is I can do an animation that moves me, and when I finish, my capsule collider also moves to where that animation is. That's what root motion is. You might have heard me refer to root motion as just an animation that is moving from its, moving out of place. That's actually not totally correct. Root motion is when the root of the character follows the animation, follows where the animation takes the character. So if you have a character walking, when he's done with his walk animation, then he should leave off where he was walking to. Okay, so you can see I've got my hurricane kick. The hitbox will come in the next episode, the next fighting game episode, the one right after this, which should be episode 54. So ignore that for now.
Fight.
But yeah, so let's get into how to implement some root motion. I just wanted to give you a large overview before we get started because this is going to be quite a bit of work and I felt that it needed some explanation. So root motion requires basically something called root on the skeleton. If we go to our character's skeleton. Now this is what ours looked like before. Mutant skeleton. When you download a character with the skeleton off of Mixamo, it starts with the root of hips. If I were to close the top area here, you see I have hips. Well, hips is okay, but Unreal specifically wants you to have a root up top. So if I go and I click into my mutant T-pose skeleton, I have a root above the pelvis. Now, this poses a bit of a problem for us if we've been using Mixamo animations, because I did not realize this, but you have to have, since Mixamo does not start with root, we need to find a way to get our skeleton to have root in it, and then all animations after that, of course, have to line up with the skeleton that uses root. So now we have to add a new thing to our chain to be able to put in an animation from Mixamo into our game if we want to support root motion. Now, quick thing I should say before we get into it. If you do want to add root motion, but you don't plan on keeping Mixamo animations for your whole game, I would not do it here. I want to be completely honest. So this method works and it's nice, but you're going to essentially have to rewrite the entire NMBP. It's going to be the same logic, but you're going to have to duplicate it. And when you duplicate an animation blueprint in Unreal, you have to set up all the new anim notifies since there will be a new skeleton and things like that. It's going to be a pretty long process. It took me about 2 hours just to get into this state. So I did not realize that root was required to be a part of root motion. I thought it could take just the root bone, but it cannot. Unreal specifically needs something called root. So anyway, the way this works is pretty annoying, but what we're going to do is we're going to download a free program that someone has offered. And we do have permission to share it, change it, and publish it. So I'm not going to be doing all of that. I'm going to be giving them full credit, but we are going to be using it today. So I have a download link in the description. Let's go to that and also go to Mixamo. But I have this download link in the description, and when you download that, you should get this Mixamo Converter Master. Now Mixamo Converter Master, you don't have to unzip it. This is going to have a README if you do unzip it. So you'd have to extract it. but you can see the README here. And this will give you all the instructions you need. This is very helpful. This is what I use to follow it. But I'm going to make a video. I'm going to actually show you in this video how to follow these instructions. I'm not going to have the instructions open, but if you get lost at any point or if I'm not making sense, feel free to use the instructions in the README. Otherwise, you do not have to zip it though, or unzip it. You can keep it as is. So open Mixamo and open Blender. Blender is another free software. You don't have to be a student or anything. You can just get this for free. We do need Blender because that is a Blender plugin, and that's how we're going to change the skeleton. So go ahead and open up another tab. I'll put the link in the description, but you can just go Blender download, and it'll come up right away. I went ahead and downloaded 2.91.2. You don't need this version. However, you do need above 2.78 is what the README says. So if you have 2.78 or higher, you should be good to go. Okay. Then once everything's installed, once you have your zip file downloaded and you have Blender installed, open up Blender. And you'll get some stuff. It'll ask you, oh, what are your preferences in Blender? Whatever. You can put whatever you want. Doesn't matter. Then you'll eventually get to a scene that looks like this. I've not added this cube. It's there by default, but the cube doesn't matter. So if for whatever reason you don't have it there, it's not important. What we want to do is add our plugin that we downloaded to Blender so that we can import our skeleton and output it with the root bone. What we do is we go to Edit, Preferences, and then Install. And then it'll ask you to go to your file path. I'm going to go ahead and choose Downloads, and here's my zip file. Just go ahead and install add-on on your zip file. Now it should automatically bring you to it, but if it doesn't, it'll exit this menu. And once you're here, all you have to do is select the thing that you want. So it's called Animation Mixamo Converter. So you can either scroll down and get to it. You can search for it if you have a lot, but I don't think you'll have too much. I'm pretty sure these are all the basic Blender ones. So, should look pretty similar. The only one you actually care about right now is Animation Mixamo Converter. If you want to double check that you have it right, just make sure you can click down this arrow and read the information. This is what it should look like. But make sure that it is installed. It's got its check. And you're good to go. Now, once it's installed, you'll be able to access it. And all you have to do is click anywhere in the scene here and click the N key. Now, for the record, I'm not by any means an expert at Blender. In fact, this is the first time I've ever opened it. So, you know, feel free to, if you know a better way to do any of this, let me know, or just go ahead and do it. This is just, I'm showing it this way because this is how I know to do it. So you press the N key, and then it could differ where it's on your screen depending on how your setup is. But look for this little pop-out window. When you press N, there should be something that pops out. And it might look like this, where it says Transforms and stuff. You want to look for a tab that says Mixamo. And then here is our converter. We've got a bunch of different settings. And I won't really cover everything because a lot of it's pretty self-explanatory. But there's a few things that weren't self-explanatory for me. So for one, the hip name does not need to be a thing. The hip name is if you're not a Mixamo rig, as it says. So essentially, what node needs to be adjusted to work in this fashion to get it a root node, to get it where it can use root motion without, you know, if you don't have the hips or the pelvis as the default node like the Mixamo skeleton does. But we don't want to do remove namespaces. We want to use Unreal Engine bone names. That's one we care about. I also removed fix bind, but I have no idea if that's actually important or not. I was just trying to get rid of all the things I could to make this as simple as possible. Fix bind worked fine with me not using it. I left everything else the same for the skeleton. We're going to import the skeleton first, then we're going to import the animations. So, go into Mixamo now, and you can pick your character, and you can pick your animations. I've already done it with the mutant, and it's working. So I'm going to pick someone else, and hope that it works as well. And if I pick a skeleton that doesn't work, then I'll be sad. But let's do it on the spot. So this guy looks pretty cool. Vampire A Lust. So if you just go ahead and download the character, you can choose between all these types and the pose. We want the T-pose, and we want to go ahead and just pick whatever type that's interesting for us. I usually just use FBX binary. Go ahead and download that. Okay, and then we have the file. Let's go into our file explorer and let's go ahead and edit this. And let's call this Vampire T-pose. Okay, this is our skeleton, Vampire T-pose. So you see I have my skeleton here. Now let's go into Blender real quick. What we're gonna do is essentially import or move our skeleton into this input folder, and then the converted skeleton is gonna pop up in the output folder. So you need to set two paths. I went ahead and made two paths in my downloads folder. I made a test, and inside the test I made a completed. Now these are the things I've converted and converted properly, the skeleton as well as some animations. I'm going to clean up a few of these because when you do these, then it gets longer and longer every time. So I'm going to get rid of all the animations I put on the mutant. Don't worry, they're still in Unreal. I'm just getting rid of them so they don't get converted every time. So just pick two folders. I'm going to pick, like I said, test. You just go into the folder and hit accept. And same with output. Test, completed, accept. Then go into where your animation is and put it into the test folder, or the folder that is in the input path here. And then you're good to go. So go ahead and check fix bind. I should be able to just batch convert, which should convert my new FBX file. Then I should be able to go back into completed, copy this, bring it into my vampire folder after I delete the old one to avoid confusion. Unreal will pick up on it and ask me if I want to import this. We do. Then, when we're here, now we have our character in here. And you can see he's got the root bone. The root bone is what we need. That's how we can apply root motion. So now that the root bone is here, we are good. Our root bone is what gives us access to be able to use root motion, as we've discussed. And now this character has it. His normal skeleton would be starting at the pelvis or the hips or something along that line, and you would not have access to it. Now if we go to our retarget manager and hit select rig, select humanoid rig, you can go ahead and see where everything's linked up. I did not have to change anything here, and it doesn't look like I'll have to change anything here this time either. However, the README and the other video that I mentioned both say to change some things because they have some values that are empty. I don't know if it's because I'm using a new version of Blender or if something in Mixamo changed, but I haven't had to change anything either time. Regardless, feel free to go to your retarget manager, select the humanoid rig, and check these things out. Make sure that everything's where it should be. Now the last thing we need to do is actually just apply an animation, make sure that it's doing root motion, and then make the animation blueprint with this new skeleton. So let's start by getting an animation that we want. I'm going to close out of my other skeleton because this is my mutant skeleton, but it looks good at this point. This is my original skeleton, you can see without the root. Okay, now we're good. We have our vampire in here. I'll save them, why not? Okay, let's go ahead and find an animation for our friend that we want. Now, a good way to do this is to just go to animations with the character still selected and find one that you want that has root motion. I don't think there's a way to like specifically search for root motion, but it's pretty obvious when there is root motion. Basically, you look at where the character is, and if they're moved from their starting point, there's root motion that can be applied there. So I won't do one with height because one with height is a little bit different. It will still work using this method, but it's going to change like, on ground and settings like that. And I think I might do another episode covering additional things. There's a bunch of specific cases, and it's kind of unfortunate. Now, if you're animating your own characters, or if you plan on not using Mixamo animations, you won't have an issue with this. But if you're stuck with Mixamo animations for now, like me, while they are good, it does give a little bit of headache because You know, you have to be so specific. But you'll get the hang of it. I got the hang of it after about an hour of playing with it, and then now I can do it pretty much instantly. So let's go ahead and find an animation with root motion. We can pick anything, really. It doesn't matter. Like a walk is even fine. But I'm trying to have one that's not, it doesn't have any rotation. And I don't think this does. This appears to be in one straight line. Let's go ahead and get one that's straight like this. I'll go ahead and download it. I'll keep my FBX binary without skin. I don't need the skin. I'll put it to 60 frames per second. Uniform or non-uniform, it doesn't matter. Again, I usually do none, but we should probably reduce them uniformly. It would be the best performance-wise. I'm going to download it just like this. Okay, we have our drunk walk animation. So now if we go back to downloads, we have drunk walk. So we want to go vampire drunk walk. I want to copy this into test as I have. You can delete the other ones now as long as you're happy with them, or keep them. In this case, I'll keep it just to show you nothing bad happens if you don't, but you can feel free to delete them. At this point, they're already converted in Unreal. Let's go back to Blender now that we put our thing in test. Now, this is what was giving me some issues. And it says the comment here, whether to transfer rotation to root motion should be enabled for curve walking animations, can be disabled for straight animations. Now, it says can be disabled for straight animations, where in my personal experience, it should be disabled for straight animations. If you don't disable this, I could not get a single animation to look correct. I don't know if I'm doing something else wrong, so it's very possible. But go ahead and get rid of transfer rotation. And then you can keep apply rotation down here. We want to apply the rotation of our character. We just don't want to transfer the rotation into movement. Okay? We want to walk in the same path that we were walking in, that the animation is showing. If the character's rotating and all during that, like he probably will since this is someone intoxicated walking, then we want to apply that rotation. We just don't want to transfer the rotation into movement. Now we can go ahead and batch convert. Only takes a few seconds. And this is with 3 things in there. If it was 1, it would only take seriously about 5 seconds. But 3 files converted. As usual, we can go into completed, grab the file we want, open up the other file where we're going to put stuff, and I should have like an animations folder here. So just for the sake of it, animations, we'll do that. And then let's go ahead and add it right there. Okay. Now if we go back into Unreal, you can probably guess what's going to happen. We have to add our correct skeleton on. The vampire a lusteth skeleton, which you can always rename these later. But that's the skeleton. I keep everything else the same, and I import all. Okay, it's done. So we go into Art, Vampire, Animations, and here's the Drunk Walk animation. So, you can see that he is moving in the animation, which is good. He's clearly has the potential for root motion here. But if we were to play this animation just like this, and unfortunately I don't have an animation blueprint set up for this guy, so I can't show you what it would look like in the fighting game right now. But you can clearly see that he's moving. This is his origin, and he gets all the way over here. There's no doubt about that. All you need to do to check if your stuff worked is go down on the animation. You have your asset details, which should be open by default when you open an animation. Scroll all the way down to root motion, enable root motion, and then you can see that it looks like he's walking in place. This is actually good. The Unreal camera goes ahead and follows the character. So you can see he's moving, he's not really moving, but that's okay. It's because his animation is not moving on its own. It's going to be moving the capsule collider or whatever the root of your character that you apply it on. And that's how you'll know that your root motion is working. Now, as long as this animation looks good, as it does now, like it looks like it's valid, you don't have anything weird going on with the animation, then it's successful. Once you put this animation in, he will walk with the root motion. Now, another thing to talk about with this. So now I got to go back to my mutant to show you some stuff. But that's importing it. This is working correctly. If you can play your animation with root motion enabled and it looks like he's moving in place, that's actually what you want to see. this means that he is waiting. He's essentially waiting for the root component of the character to be able to move. He doesn't have that here, so you're not going to see any movement. But when you put that in the game, it'll look good. I'm going to close out of these because these are good, and I'm going to show you some stuff with the mutant now. Now, if we go into our mutant, I have something called Mutant Anim BP Root Motion. For those that are familiar with the series, Mutant Anim BP is my main animation blueprint. I went ahead and I copied the entire Mutant Anim BP. Again, it took about 2 hours. Now, you can just click in here, Control A, see everything, highlight, Control C. Just add new animation blueprint. You'll have to select the correct skeleton. So select your new skeleton that's got the root motion. In my case of the mutant, I was using mutant skeleton. I now had to switch to the mutant T-pose skeleton. And then once you go in here, you can Control V and paste everything. Now, obviously, I don't want to do that because I already have it in there. So I just undid it because I got nervous that it was going to save or crash, and then that was going to be there forever. But it's the exact same logic. Again, my logic isn't important for this episode, but I'm just showing you. I didn't change anything with the Mutant Anim BP. It's the same animation blueprint, but you have to make a new one with the skeleton. Unless Unreal has changed something that I'm not familiar with at this point, then you have to make a new one. It's a big complaint that people who are using Unreal have, and I agree. It's kind of silly. You need to be able to change the skeleton, and it needs to be able to just change the available animations, and that's it. It should be able to keep the rest. But the way it works, unfortunately, we can't do that. So you have to rewrite all your functions, and you can copy and paste. I did that, but it's still going to take some time. Make sure you promote all your variables back to variables. And then, unfortunately, your state machine, you'll also have to, all your transition rules will stay and everything. Like if you can actually Control A, Control C in here, but you will have to change out your animation for all the animations that you download from Mixamo with the new skeleton. Or with the converted method. If you had all your animations in your folder still, you can just pull them out, know exactly what animations they are from Mixamo, download them, convert them, and put them back. It really won't take too long. Again, it took me about 2 hours to rewrite this whole thing. It's not too bad, but it is a pain in the butt. The good thing is, with this method now in place, now we can have root motion. And let me show you how we actually activate root motion on the Anim BP, because you can have root motion on the animation and there's still no root motion occurring. So if you go in class defaults anywhere in your Anim BP, you have a section called root motion and a setting called root motion mode, and it's normally no root motion extraction, ignore root motion, or root motion from montages only. I can't remember, but all three of these will not work for the way that we've set up our character. You need root motion from everything. Now, what I will say, root motion from everything does not support networking at the moment. Well, it does support networking, or networking does support it, rather, but it's not as optimal and ideal as root motion from montages only. So, there's a very good chance if you want to have root motion, you should do it in an anim montage. The good thing about that is doing an anim montage is not going to screw up our state machine. It's very, very easy to switch between them, and we are going to be going over root motion with montages, and just montages in general. So, don't worry, that's not going to make you rewrite your Anim BP or anything. In fact, it's not even going to be a major change. We just might have to learn some stuff that we haven't done before. But for now, root motion from everything, if you don't have montages in there, just so that you can see it working. When you switch it over, once we get montages in, then we'll be good to go networking-wise, and no problems there. But now, just to show you that it is in fact working, let me go to my hurricane kick, if I could find it. It's this one right here. Okay. So just to show you that this does work. It looks like he's in place, right? But that is what you saw with root motion at the beginning. Okay. These anim notifiers are related to the fighting game and not this episode, so don't worry about that. And I wanted to show you what could happen with certain animations. Now, this appears to be part of the converting issue, and I've only seen it about 1 out of 8 attempts, 8 animations I downloaded, but for some reason this animation becomes very jittery. This is one of the things that I'm not entirely sure what settings are should be used to fix this, if any can. But there are certain Mixamo animations that have this effect. It appears to be a lot less than, you know, actually work normally, but just be careful. If you see this, it will look like that in game, which obviously looks bad. So you may need to adjust some of the logic. What I will say is it's not a root motion thing. It is literally when that animation gets converted, it looks weird now. But yeah, I kept that in there to show you guys. Alright guys, that's about all I wanted to cover for today. I am going to be getting into some air combat and some juggling in the fighting game tutorial, and when I do that, I'm going to need some more root motion on animations in the air and things like that. So I may very well come back and do another episode on how to refine this process for different types of animations, such as the issue we just saw, or maybe air combat and things like that. But before I get a full grasp on it, I don't want to lead you astray. That's what I know from now. That's worked for me for about however many animations this is, 41. So I'm confident in this method, and I'm confident that this will work okay. But just be sure when you're applying root motion on animations that they get converted. And all your animations, even if they don't have root motion, will unfortunately need to be converted at one point or another, so that they can have the proper skeleton we're using now. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed and this helped you apply root motion to your characters and in a way that you found was nice, given the circumstances, no method is nice here as far as I'm concerned when using Mixamo animations, please subscribe. It means more to me than anything else you can do for this channel, and I just really, really appreciate it, so thank you so much. I want to give a huge shout out to my YouTube membership and Patreon supporters. Thank you, Colton, for the new Patreon subscription. Appreciate that. And yeah, just thanks for believing in me and giving me the support to do episodes like this, where I want to tear my hair out, redoing 2 hours of work that I did not realize would have to happen just because I was using Mixamo animations. If you did have issues with this episode or any of my tutorials, feel free to join the Discord. The link is in the description. We'll be able to get you sorted for any problems you have, and you'll be good to go. Lastly, guys, if you want to come support us on Twitch, we're finishing Demon Souls this week, as well as starting a new horror game on Friday. We'll see what that's about. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.